Man, Rapunzel is so cool. One of my favorite free LC lords of all time for Warhammer, for sure. Today is going to be a little bit of a two-parter, so if you want to get straight to the battle, go ahead and click the timestamp in the description below. I'm going to upfront this a little bit with some discussion and feedback to CA regarding free LC, legendary lords and heroes, and just the whole, Shadows of Change situation. I think one thing that myself and many others have raised, while legendary heroes are very cool, I'm glad to see many in the game. Cold's awesome. I arguably think he maybe should have been a lord. Other people disagree. That's fine. You can debate that all you want. But in general, my point of we need cool new legendary lords to flesh out factions which are severely lacking, I think still stands. And I'm looking at particular factions like Norska or others which have very few legendary lords, or even some of the newer factions, right? Like maybe we implement some more, I don't know, god-specific chaos characters who are lord-level characters who can actually take the demon factions, rather than having it just be Kugath or Skarbrand and so on. In general, there's just a lot of characters from Warhammer you could add all over the place. There's even easy wins within the game already, making semi-legendary lords such as Boris Todbringer, or the Red Duke, or even Surtha Ek playable. Please, if you make Surtha Ek playable, I will make a lot of people, including myself, very happy, and I think bring a lot of community goodwill back. So, the generic lords is also another discussion I think I'm going to save for another time. But we do need more generic lords and heroes as well, and I'll talk specifically about the ones I think should be added, Shadows of Change. And I do think, honestly, that Thrones of Decay needs to be delayed so that Shadows of Change can be brought up to speed on the content that it needs in order to be a good value proposition. And, yeah, also to make sure that Thrones of Decay itself has enough content to be a good value proposition. And I think people in the community would be pretty understanding if you announced a delay to Thrones of Decay and said explicitly you're making more content for both DLCs to make sure that it provides good value to your customers. I think that would go a long way into remedying the situation. But anyway, today I wanted to specifically talk about Bretonnia, of course, and Grail Knights. They did get nerfed. I think the main thing was their large size was changed back down to medium size, which all cavalry have. They're no longer technically chariots, I guess, and as some people would say. It still retained pretty much all of their stats though, so they're going to be quite strong. And today we're testing them against Human Boy's Kislev. He's brought a lot of the new stuff. Doesn't have any Akshina ambushers, but he's got some armored Kossars, Griffin Legion. He's got some things in the woods as well. Mother Astankia, Incarnate of Elemental Beasts. And yeah, that's basically it. For myself, I've gone with what I would consider to be close to tournament. I don't know if Rapunzel is quite tournament level. She is quite good. Great combat stats all around. 15% ward save with Blessing of the Lady available to all knight units and characters now, which is just fantastic. So, yeah, quite strong. Gives a nice AoE buff, of course, as well. Makes Grail Knights and other knights even stronger. Got 2 Grail Knights, 1 on each flank, and Companions of Cornell. I know in a lot of rule sets, Grail Knights are currently limited to 1 in the 3.1 patch. It's currently live. That said, I don't know that that necessarily needs to change. I don't know that if it would change. I don't know. I'm not sure if I have strong feelings about it one way or the other, so I'll let rules makers, make that decision. But here we're going to get a nice charge straight into the Armored Kossars and follow up around into the Griffin Legion, which is charging straight into some peasant mobs. Try and rear charge them as we follow through. Rapunzel and Henri here as well. Getting that Curse of Honrair. It does hit the Grail Knights as well, so some pretty good magic support. Doesn't really save the Griffin Legion as they get completely destroyed on a rear charge there. Incarnate of Elemental Beast charging in, taking huge damage from my archers. Human Boy's got to get in, compromise them as soon as possible, but he does have now some things that would starting to work the flanks. The War Sled as well. One heavy War Sled comes in and just runs rampant, starts to severely disrupt and damage my backline here. Mother Stankia also trying her best, but being pursued by 2 strong Bretonnia Knights. Characters not a good time for her, obviously. But, yeah. The Grail Knights are certainly doing their thing. Things in the Woods are absolutely no match for them, and Grail Knights hard counter pretty much everything they can bring to the table, so it's one of the matchups, I would say, probably the #1 matchup where the new units actually don't help at all. Akshinas are quite vulnerable to counterfire from peasants due to the lack of armor, and also just will get destroyed by Grail Knights on charges, I would imagine. Also, I mean, it seems like pretty hopeless matchup for Kislev on paper. I don't know. Certainly no Kislev expert, but the new stuff really doesn't seem to apply here at all, given that it's all vulnerable to the strengths of Bretonnia, namely cheap archers and very strong anti-large knights. Still definitely the best in the game, it seems like. I don't know, remains to be seen against other very strongly knight-focused factions, but I mean, just look at the damage there. These Things in the Woods, target after target, Grail Knights charging into and just deleting, so yeah, don't worry, don't fret yourself if you're worried the Grail Knights are going to be overly nerfed. They are still quite strong, and in general, Bretonnia is probably still going to be, you know, A tier, S tier, depending on the rule set and how much Grail Knights are limited. I would say 1 or 2 would probably be the most sensible thing to do. But it's definitely interesting having Blessing of the Lady available to just all your characters and the knights and so forth. Really does kind of change some of the cost calculations a little bit, because that extra damage resistance is quite good if you can keep your units from routing. Grail Knights here charging through, and we'll get in close and see as they try and path through these armored Kossars. You see, they don't necessarily path through quite as brutally as before. Granted, I don't have them in lance formation necessarily, so don't have their maximum possible amount of mass, but still, previously I felt like the Grail Knights would just run straight through those guys, so it's definitely not going particularly well for Human Boy, and I should say this replay is absolutely not a reflection of his skill at all. I mean, we're just testing out stuff. Shouldn't be taken too seriously, although my build here, like I said, I don't know if Rapunzel is necessarily meta. She's relatively cheap for what you get out of her, being a powerful Horse Lord, and just supporting Bretonnia's playstyle quite well. It went well. I mean, I can't really say too much more than that. Yeah, Grail Knights still very, very strong. Both pay for themselves. Companions of Quenelle don't necessarily have to do as much. Ponce also chips in 1,000 value, as does Henri. The archers all get great value, even just with the initial phase shooting down that incarnate elemental of beasts, which itself is still able to pretty much pay for itself just by that AoE drain and getting, yeah, some really nice kills, I'd imagine, on that. Some good anti-large damage as well. It's definitely an interesting one. I would say out of all the stuff in the new DLC, this is probably the one that you could maybe work into a build if you have good tools for shutting down Bretonnian archers, maybe like invest more heavily in light cavalry and cut the Things in the Woods. They don't really do much for you here. Not a lot of armored infantry you have to worry about for Bretonnia. I mean, foot squires are not really that much of a danger here, I would say. So, yeah, but of course, Human Boy's just testing them out to see if that is the case. The War Sled's definitely an interesting one. Ostankia, I don't think is necessarily terrible here, but it's definitely an interesting matchup. I think definitely the Cav Bear Blob is Kislev's best chance still in this matchup. Against Grail Knights, though, as they still are, I'm not sure how it would go. Bretonnia also, I mean, just the cheap archers, fantastic. Crappy cheap infantry is here. A lot of it is still reasonably cost-effective, actually, which is nice to see. So, there you go. Fear not, fans of Bretonnia. They are still quite strong and will, I think, be able to compete with Cathay and Kislev and some of the other power-crept factions on this next update. So, definitely something to look forward to there, if that's your thing. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.